Good afternoon. Welcome to the tea table. I am so happy you have joined me today. And I want to show you something before I begin. This gorgeous tablecloth was a gift to me from my dear friend Ruth, who just got back from India. And it is such a perfect Thanksgiving tablecloth that I wanted to show you. It has dancing girls, and it's all different autumn colors, and it's hard for me to show things on this tea table, but maybe at the end I'll show you the whole length of the table, because it will really show you this gorgeous. It is all the colors I love for autumn. It's orange, yellow, green, purple, the color of the squash, the color of the eggplant, the color of the pumpkin. That's why we have these beautiful autumn colors. Well, I have a very full tea talk today, and I want to talk about our wonderful holy day that is coming next Thursday, Thanksgiving. Now, I am wearing something that maybe you would think, oh my, that wouldn't be what the Pilgrims would wear. However, if you study the Pilgrims and the Puritans, they were not just black and white or charcoal gray and white. They often wore many colors. Well, I had to wear this shawl for you. I couldn't wait. It is also a gift from India, from these beautiful people that sent it to me for the tea table, and I wanted to show you the colors. They go so perfect. See the purple, the green, and the gold? And this shawl is like a heavy, it's thin, but it's a thick wool. It's pure wool. And it is actually, I am wearing this over a sleeveless dress, and I am perfectly warm in this cold November weather. And that's why I wanted to wear this and just honor these beautiful people. Shangar is a minister who oversees 20,000 ministries in southern India, Mumbai, which used to be Bombay. And he has quite a story, and I'm going to do a total talk on India very soon and talk about his people. They are the gypsy people of India, and they were considered a very low caste because when the trains came, they all lost their jobs. Their jobs were carrying things in wagons. You know, the gypsies in every country are on the move. Well, they lost that opportunity and became poor. But his story is beautiful. And so I'm going to save that for another tea talk. But I was so excited about this beautiful shawl, I thought I'm going to wear it for Thanksgiving tea talk. It has the deep forest green, the purple, the yellow, and then the beautiful tablecloth. And this tablecloth was such a miracle. Ruth showed me a picture of several cloths she had gotten for friends. And I saw these bright colors and I said, oh, I want that. And I thought it was just maybe a little square for a small square table. However, it absolutely fits my table, my dining room table, perfect. And I'll try to get a shot of it on the end to show you the length, because it's beautiful. And if you haven't gotten your tea yet, please pause, get your tea. I'll be waiting for you. I thought, here I come. This is a rather large tea set. But what would the Pilgrims have had? Not on that ship, not China, not silver. They couldn't afford silver. In the 1600s, pewter was what people used. And I happen to have this pewter tea set. I've never brought it to the tea table. I thought, what a perfect time. And I found a brown cup. On the back, it says the old mill, but it looks like the scene is saying goodbye to England, hello to America. England and America are so connected because, of course, the Pilgrims came from England. And the cup has the barn. Well, that would have been the next generation. But as soon as they landed, they started building because we will tell the story today. It's a long, beautiful story. But first, let's pour out. And for the treat, I have just a few. By the time the Pilgrims got to America, they just had a few crumbs left. And these are little chocolate cookies that they probably didn't have anything that good by the time they got to America. But I'm going to pour out. Isn't this a beautiful pot? Oh my goodness, it's very heavy. These teapots, some of them are so heavy. I prefer a light pot because to pick it up full of water and tea is... So this is your cup, and I'm going to just let it sit there for you. And this is my cup. Well, I'm sorry. Let's pour you some tea too. That's not polite. So there's your tea. And we'll give you a little splash of milk too. Most people like a little milk or cream in their tea, but some like it black. Now, my father, who was a real tea drinker, he liked, this was his taste, basic Lipton tea with a little sugar, no milk. And my mother had never used milk in her tea until they visited me in England and they started having it there, and then she always used it from then on. I've heard the milk is good because it covers the tannic acid in tea and makes it a little better for your digestion. Oh my goodness, that's delicious. Well, I'm going to scoot away this tea set for a minute and then we'll pull it back. But I want to show you, this is show and tell for sure. I have my beautiful Pilgrims. I think I've had them on here before. This is the most beautiful set I have, and it's just simple ceramic. Let's see, I'll put them like that, and I'll hold her forward. She's holding a basket of fruit, and he is holding a pumpkin. And they are coming to the Thanksgiving feast. Isn't that beautiful? Now, let's move them aside for a moment. And I want to show you another pilgrim. This is the minister. And he's carrying a Bible. Isn't that? And he's in color. It's very nice. Then we have, this is a very sweet, this is a lady pilgrim going to church. She's carrying her Bible. And what do you think he's carrying? He has a gun. He's going to protect them from the wild animals. And they were right in the middle of the woods. Oh my, the Pilgrims, what they went through is pretty astonishing. Just getting there was the astonishing thing. Maybe I'll just leave them here. I want to read just a few things to you today to make sure that I have this properly, because I've studied this for years. You all have. We've all heard the Pilgrim story. And yet, when you go back in to study it again and refresh, there's always new information. And I learned something this time that I did not know last time. So I'm going to, well, first of all, sorry, I'm going to show you. My daughter Elizabeth made these darling pilgrims when she was very young in school. And I thought, you know, it's really hard to find pilgrims now. Thanksgiving is being ignored. People are going from Halloween to Christmas. And so I think if you are school teachers, I think something like this was paper mache. Aren't they adorable? And I've had them on my table every year for Thanksgiving. They're just so sweet. So we'll let them sit there too. I want you to be able to enjoy it. Let's move that tea set down a little bit more, out of the way. Okay, and let these line up. Now, I'll tell you who I'm missing. I have Squanto, and I couldn't find him today, and I have Massasite, and then I have a lady, Indian princess too. But I couldn't find them. So if I find them by next week, I'm going to put them on because they're very important to the Pilgrim story. And Squanto was so important, truly divine provision from God for these pilgrims. And I was reading that in history, many Christians and ministers have viewed Squanto like Joseph in the Bible, where Joseph was taken as a captive down to Egypt, but ended up providing food for not just his family, but for all of the Egyptians, because he was a wise man. Remember, the Pharaoh had a dream and knew that a famine, well, he said, I see 7 very fat cows and 7 lean cows. And Joseph interpreted the dream. He said, you're going to have 7 years of plenty, and then you're going to have 7 years of famine. So we need to build barns and save the grain. And that saved everyone's life, including the Israelites who went down to Egypt and were able to get grain. Well, just like that, when the Pilgrims landed, oh my, at Plymouth Rock, they had planned to go to New York, to the north, but the winds and waves sailed them down, and it was providential. They came into Cape Cod, but then they went down and found where, Plymouth Rock is, the Massachusetts, and founded that beautiful colony, Plymouth Plantation. Well, to back up a little bit, I had forgotten about the fact, I knew that they had a hard time getting out of England, but they were planning originally to go straight from England, and they were leaving in the summer so they would get to America early fall so they could have time to have good weather and build and set up a place to live. They're going to an open forest. Well, remember, and this is another lesson in history, there's an old-fashioned saying, God's delays are not God's denials. If something is postponed, there's a purpose often. Well, when they tried to leave England, originally, and even backing up a little further, there was a man named William Brewster who was an elder in the church, and he lived in Scrooby. He had a beautiful manor house, and they were being persecuted. They could not worship God the way they felt God wanted them to worship them. By the 1600s, the people are reading and writing, and they all have Bibles. Because remember, 100 years before, William Tyndale, who was burned at the stake for translating the Bible into English, right around 1515, he was burned at the stake, and then his prayer before he died was, God open the eyes of the King of England, and that was Henry VIII, who then just within a few years was divorced from Catherine of Aragon and married Anne Boleyn, and he was excommunicated by the Pope, and he said, I will become the head of the church and I will have the Bible, and he let the Bible go to the people. This was like an overnight miracle. It's called the Protestant Reformation that went from Germany and the continent over to England. Well, because they had had a Bible for 100 years, they had come to the conclusion that there were corruption within the church, and they wanted to establish their own way of worship. Well, by then they were being persecuted for it. They said, no, you have to be in the Church of England. And there were certain things. Now, there were the Puritans. And a Puritan means I want to stay in the Church of England, but I want to purify it. I want to try to convince verbally and with prayer and negotiation. But then there were the separatists, and they were the ones that said, it's no hope. We have to just start our own group. And they were also called the when they were on the Mayflower, some of them were called saints, some of them were called separatists, and then there were the strangers. And stranger meant that they were on the Mayflower to go to the New World, but not for the purpose of religious freedom. So that's where those definitions come in. And it always is a little complicated. I think children, when they first learn the story, need to have these definitions clearly given to them so they understand. It's taken me years to get it all straight, and I think it's because often it's just presented as a story. They start here instead of starting here. We need to start at the foundation. Well, so these people were worshiping, and it was William Brewster in his place. Now, they finally decided, we have to get out, because they were burning people at the stake in England too. One man was burned at the stake because he read the Lord's Prayer in English to his child without the help of a priest. That's pretty serious. So they got on the boat, and then the captain deceived them, and they didn't have that much money. He took all their money, all their goods, and they had to go back. So then they went again on a boat, but this time they went to Holland, because by then they didn't have enough money to make the American journey. So for 12 years, the Pilgrims with William Brewster lived in Leiden, Holland. Okay, and here is a picture that I brought for you, and I have this picture hanging in my kitchen. I love this picture. And it's the Pilgrims leaving when they lived there 12 years, and William Brewster is still the leader. He has a printing machine. They write pamphlets, print pamphlets, get them back to England. But then finally, they decide to leave. And this is when they are leaving Holland, 12 years later. The reason they decided to leave Holland is because their children were growing up Dutch. They weren't knowing the English language the way that they wanted them. Maybe I'll stand. Well, I don't know. I guess you can't really see this picture. I'll just let this go now, but that's a famous painting. So the Dutch were very much free Protestant Reformation people. John Calvin had had a lot of influence in Holland. Erasmus had lived there, and he had been a translator of the Bible during the time of Martin Luther. And so the Dutch were, I'm sure that the Pilgrims learned a lot of good things. The Dutch have beautiful hymns. They have their own hymnody, and it's just gorgeous hymns. They also love the pipe organ, and the Dutch Reformed Church is the National Church of Holland. Well, when they left and went back to England and said, we're going to go now to America, half of them were older, and William Brewster thought he could do more good staying in England and sponsoring them. So on to the Mayflower, finally, a group of them go. But they had two ships, remember. They had the Speedwell and the Mayflower. But the Speedwell kept having leaks. Now that's a problem. You can't go across the Atlantic Ocean to the new world so they had to turn around and get it repaired. Then they went out again and they had to turn around again. And finally, the people said, it's not repairable. So they had to transfer everything from the Speedwell onto the Mayflower. Finally got on the road. That's why they were so late. They did not arrive in the New World until, let's see, November 9th, 1620 was when they arrived. And then they finally arrived at the Plymouth Plantation December. And can you imagine? Many of them just stayed on the ship. They didn't even have a tent or a lean-to. They couldn't build in that weather. I've never really been to Massachusetts, but I know that it's extremely cold there. And I know that you cannot start building a house in December. And so they were really at the mercy. They tried to, so then many of them got sick and half of them died. Very, very sad. And there was a young man, and he is very famous, another William. So you see, it's easy to get them mixed up because they're both William B. William Brewster is the man who was the elder at the Scrooby Church, the leader. But William Bradford was a young orphan who was taken in by the Brewsters, and really they were like parents to them, and they trained him, and he just became an incredible leader. Now he is the reason we have the information, because he became the governor of the Plymouth colony for 30 years. And he wrote the book, and I have the book. I went up to my library to look, could not find it, could not put my hands on it, but I have the book. It's called Of Plymouth Plantation by William Bradford. And that is the definitive work, because he kept meticulous journals. He could write and tell what had happened. Now this is what I learned today. I knew there was one baby that was born on the boat, and it was by a lady. Her name was Susanna, I believe Susanna White. And they named the baby Oceana because it was born on the ocean. Well, then there was another man on the boat who was mocking the Pilgrims because of their religious beliefs and their devotion. And do you know that that man had the most terrible thing happen? He fell off the boat and he died. Well, that put the fear of God in everyone. We thought no one's going to make fun of the Pilgrims. It was a terrible tragedy. But when they got to America, the husband of Susanna died, and the wife of William Bradford died. And so within a year, they married and then had 4 more children, because there were so many losses in this colony, but somehow they made it. I mean, America is founded on extreme perseverance, not giving up, having a vision, being strong. Well, this colony was amazing. And in order to survive, the miracle was God, out of the woods one day, walks this Indian, and his name is Squanto, and he speaks English. Do you know the backstory of Squanto? In 1602, that was 20 years before, he was taken. They were selling him because he was a strong young man. And this monk from a monastery, some of the Catholics had come and had small settlements. He felt compassion for this young man, and he bought him, brought him back to the monastery, raised him, took him to England, taught him English. He had skills and he had a good education. He was very knowledgeable, but he wanted to go back to his people. So he got the money together and got on a ship and came back. And sadly, his whole tribe had died. And it's still a mystery. No one knows why. They called it Indian fever or some kind of a disease or someone, but there was nothing. So when he walked out of the woods and saw these people, he immediately became their friend. He was also a Christian. He worshiped with them. He taught them everything about how to plant corn, how to put fish in the corn as nutrients to help the corn grow. He was a lifesaver. He was to them what Joseph was in Egypt to the Israelites. Isn't it a beautiful story how God provides? And the entire beautiful story of the Pilgrims, you have to study on your own. You will learn more. There is so much more. And then the first child that was born, and I didn't know this until today when I was reviewing my notes, was named Pergolene. Now that is a Latin word for pilgrim, Pergolene. And that's what the child was named. There are people today that have ancestors that go back to the Mayflower, and that's really amazing. With ancestrynow.com and all these things, people can really find their roots. But I heard it said that most people will never know 4 generations back. That will be it. And so that makes us very humble as people. We think everything is so big, but you know, the time goes on, and some are remembered for the great things they do, but the love we put in people's hearts may not be remembered, but will go on to the next generation. And when we give faith to our children, teach them about God and God's love, we are passing faith and God to the next generation. I think that is the most important thing we can give them. I used to feel like years ago, I wanted to buy land and give each of my children like 10 or 20 acres. But it didn't work out. We were raising 7 kids. We had so many things, trying to get the music lessons, the education, the sports. You know, that just didn't happen. But one day, I was praying and I felt God say to me, don't worry, land is good, but it's not everything. If you give your children faith and teach them how to pray in faith, I will provide everything they need and more. They'll have more than 10 acres of land. Isn't that beautiful? Now, you know, this light behind me looks like a candle, doesn't it? But you know what? It isn't. It's a little lamp. It's a little Tiffany lamp. I'm going to turn it off and turn it on. Let's see what happens. Ah, not quite as bright. And you know, this lamp, it reminds me of Thanksgiving. I want to show it to you. The colors in it, if you can see it, are green and orange and burnished brass. You know, isn't that, let's turn it off and see if you can see the actual colors better. See, this is the color of the lamp. Isn't that beautiful? Turn it on, and I have it by this table with this beautiful cloth, and it picks up the light and shines, and all day long it looks like I have a candle. And yet I didn't have to be worried about it, turning it off or turning it on. Isn't that great? You know, I love Thanksgiving. I know you love Thanksgiving. I know we all have different plans for Thanksgiving. And these pilgrims, let's not forget them. And if possible, go to church. Every church used to have a Thanksgiving service. It was one of the most important services of the whole year. It's saying, thank you, God. Thank you for all the things you've given me, and to live in a beautiful country like America. My, we are so rich. I brought a stack of books to show you, but I think we're running out of time here on the Tea Talk. I'm going to bring back the little set here of the pewter set to show you. So there we have that. Boy, that one's tall. Let's move that over. Move this one here. I have a lot going on the tea table today, but that's how it is. I had some different pieces of china. Maybe I'll show you another time that had a few scenes of the Pilgrims. That light is kind of interesting. It just shines. Let's see if I turn it a little bit there. It's not quite so much red in the face. Well, there it is again. Okay. Well, just turn it maybe that way. Maybe that works better. It's amazing. Light is the most amazing thing, and how it differs, and a candle can make the whole room just glow. So, and a little lamp. I think when we live in a rainy, cold climate, it's wonderful to have a little cozy lamp in every room. It brings the light. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and I pray you all have the most beautiful Thanksgiving. We are going away. We're going over the river and through the woods. We used to go to grandmother's house, but beloved Granny is now in heaven. She would be over 100, but she had Thanksgiving for years, and then it was at Aunt Linda's house. Well, this year we're going to go for the whole family is going to meet over in Port Orchard and have a reunion of that kind of Thanksgiving we had for years and years with Granny and Aunt Linda and all the family. And it was always fun to drive to Port Orchard, and a few times we had snow, and it was over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house. And Thanksgiving is so important, so special. If you don't have a lot of people, invite others in. We have had Thanksgivings where we had guests that were not family come and join us. I've had a Thanksgiving where I was all alone. I was in Juneau, Alaska. I was really young. I think I was 20. And do you know that I was in school? I didn't want to leave my school. I went to work at a children's home there, and then I was in college, so I stayed. And one of the professors from the college, the university, invited me home with his family, and I thought that was so kind and generous, and it's an expansion of knowing people and meeting people. And you know, when I was at the University of Washington, I was completing a history degree, and it was an undergraduate degree at that time, completing a bachelor's, but I found out I could take graduate classes, and I only had to meet once a week and write a huge paper, and I got 5-hour credits, 5-quarter credits, because I was trying to graduate, because I was getting married, and I wanted to graduate before I got married. Well, two of my professors, Dr. Bell, taught British Victorian literature, history, and then my other professor, an English professor, Dr. Johnson, taught American Revolution. That was interesting. Both of those professors had all of us come to their homes, and it was so special. I remember it was at Thanksgiving time. It was right after Thanksgiving, and Dr. Bell had made this fabulous, I don't know how he did it, on the stove, all the leftovers in a pot, and the top was a crust. So it was like a turkey pot pie, but it was served from the top of the stove, and it was in a pot. It was just delicious. Such important memories. Have people in your home they'll never forget. And if there are people from other countries, invite them in. My daughter in Wisconsin, she and her husband, they had they called it a friend giving. Saturday, they had a lot of friends in, 20 people with their little children, and they had a couple with their children from India come. Isn't that beautiful? I'm so happy they did that. And I think have foreign students come, or whoever. I know our friends at Chaffee's, they have 20 often Asian students come to their home for Thanksgiving. I guarantee you those people will never forget that. That is hospitality in fabulous form, I think. So God bless you all, and I pray you have the best week. And we move right from Thanksgiving, of course, into fun Black Friday and Christmas. So I'll see you next week, and we will pick up where we left off. And I have to tell you, I got a click. I don't know what they call them, but it's, the device that clicks it on and off. My son came, set it up. He did it so fast. He goes, "Oh, no problem. This is great. I'm all set up." Well, I tried to use it today. It didn't work. It was too fast. I have to go back and renew my understanding of how to make it work. So I am going to turn it off, but I'll stand up and show you one more view of this. It's so hard to see this East Indian shawl, but I tell you, it is. And here's the back. And then look at the inside. The inside is even, I think it could be worn either way. The inside has some bright, beautiful purple. So, okay, God bless you all. Happy Thanksgiving from the tea table.